Hey guys, welcome back to That Florida Feeling. I hope everybody's had a great week. My thoughts go out to everybody who's been affected by the tornadoes. That's horrible, especially it's close to the holidays. I really feel for them. I'm from kind of close to that area, and that's just, I'm sorry. I feel for them so much. I can't imagine it. But I'll be honest with you, it doesn't even feel like the holidays. I don't know if it's because it's 80 outside or if it's just, I don't know. It just doesn't feel like the holidays this year. I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels that way. Or at least I hope I'm not. Want to give a quick shout out to all the new people I have liking the Facebook page, Instagram page, and the group. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. And all the new listeners. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on notifications. I'd hate for you guys to miss any new awesome episodes I have coming out. I can't believe I've been doing this for 6 months, you guys. And you guys are just supporting me so amazingly. It's just thank you so much. I wouldn't be doing this if you guys still didn't want to hear it. So I really appreciate you guys. So I want to just mention something again like I did last week's podcast. If you need somebody to talk to, just reach out to me. I know that holidays can be hard, and I know that sometimes it's just not a fun time of the year. So please message me. Say hi. I will gladly talk to you. I will gladly message you back. It's always fun to hear from people. But please don't feel like you're alone. You're not. I promise you that you're not. I, for one, am thankful that you're here. Just in general. Not just because you listen to my podcast, even though that gives you a lot of credit. But just everybody counts. So reach out. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. My email address is on the thing. Please feel free to just say hi. Or, hey, I want to rant about my day. And that's fine. I don't mind that, you guys. So just know that I'm here for each and every one of you. And I hope that you know that you're thought of and loved and cared for. So on to a lighter note. I have been trying to figure out new and different things to talk about in Florida. And then I realized I'm overlooking the best parts of Florida, which is its cities. Florida has some really cool cities, and not just small ones, but big ones too. And today I want to talk about one of my favorite cities. I kind of gave you guys a hint about where I was on Monday, if you saw the Instagram. But we're going to talk about Tampa. And it's Tampa, not Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is a body of water. Tampa is the city. Yes, there are areas called Old Tampa Bay, but that is not over a bridge. Sorry, that's like my pet peeve. Tampa Bay is water. So if you live in Tampa Bay or you live in a houseboat, just asking. All right, sorry, rant over. But Tampa is actually the biggest city on Florida's Gulf Coast, and it borders the north and east shores of Tampa Bay. And it's actually the largest city in the Tampa Bay area, which is made up of a couple different cities. It's also the seat of Hillsborough County. Now, Tampa actually has a population of 384,000 as of 2020, and that makes it the third most populous city in Florida after Jacksonville and Miami. Side note, I'm still shocked that Jacksonville is the most populated city in Florida. And we'll talk about it another day, but that just amazes me. And Tampa's been around a long time. Its history is actually rooted in the military, the cigar industry, of course, tourism, and the maritime industry. And it actually has the largest port in the state, and it's responsible for up to 15 billion, with a B, billion, in economic impact on the state. The Tampa Bay area is actually made up of a couple cities, like I said, usually consisting of Tampa, Clearwater, St. Pete, and a couple smaller cities. And it's actually an area of about 4 counties that holds close to 3.1 million residents. It's the second largest metropolitan area in the state, and it is 4th in the southeastern U.S. So, how did Tampa get its start to become what it is today? Well, let's talk about that. It's actually got a pretty interesting history. Tampa was originally a U.S. Army outpost named Fort Brooke, and it wasn't even incorporated until 1849. And the outpost was called Tampa Town, and it just kind of stuck. Now, the town was officially changed to Tampa in 1855, but where did Tampa itself come from? Now, the earliest mentions of Tampa, or Tampa, so it's with an N, not an M like it is today, Tampa, and it appears in the memoirs of Hernando de Escalante Fontaneda. And Fontaneda actually spent 17 years captive from the Calusa tribe. And of course, that's a native tribe in Southwest Florida, and he spent a lot of time with them. As you can tell, 17 years is quite a bit. He learned a lot, and he actually traveled with them over a lot of the Florida Peninsula. There was a question at some point if he was a captive still at that point or just became a tribe member, but either way, he probably learned a lot, and that's actually really cool. And that's where we get a lot of our info from, is from his time with them. Now, the town of Tampa, again with an N, was actually placed and given the name by archaeologist Gerald Milanich, and that places it at the mouth of Charlotte Harbor, which is actually south of where it's located presently. The entrance to the Tampa Bay and Charlotte Harbors are both obscured by barrier islands that go along the side of the state, and their locations can actually easily be mixed up, and this is probably what happened in the 16th century to map makers and surveyors. And it's not like it was an easy thing to fix. The confusion actually lasted well into the 18th century when Bahia, Tampa, and Bahia Espiritu Santo were formed, and one was modern-day Tampa Bay and one was modern-day Charlotte Harbor. Tampa Bay was actually labeled as Bahia de Espiritu Santo, which is Bay of the Holy Spirit, in the earliest maps of Florida, and it became known as B Tampa or Tampa Bay as early as 1576. Now, B Tampa appeared on printed maps for the first time by Antonio de Herrera y Tordesillas. I can't believe I said that right, or probably closely said that right. Who printed a book in Madrid in 1601 showing the New World, and he printed it as B Tampa. And the area was renamed a few times, such as San Fernando in 1757, and in 1774 they couldn't figure out what to call it, so they started calling it two separate things. Tampa Bay was called Bay of Espiritu Santo, and then other parts of it were called Hillsborough Bay. And we know today that Tampa Bay, with part of it, is called Old Tampa Bay. There's actually sections of Tampa Bay with it itself. Very confusing, trust me. I had to read it like 6 times before I could explain it to you guys. Now, the shores of Tampa Bay have been inhabited for thousands of years, and mainly by the variant of the Weeden Island culture that developed in the area about 2,000 years ago. Side note, Weeden is what I was talking to you guys about when I did the video, I believe it was Wednesday. I think it was Wednesday. This week has killed me, you guys. I don't know. I barely remember today was Friday to get a podcast out, but when I was showing you the video doing the live stream on Wednesday, I talked about the Weeden Island culture, and that was where I was standing. That's actually on the shores of Tampa Bay, in Safety Harbor. So it's been, the area's been around a long time. Where I was at was actually an Indian mound, which was kind of cool that they preserved it. And there's a lot of them in the area. But the archaeological research suggested that they were heavily reliant on the ocean and the bay for most of their resources. So that meant that a lot of their sites were actually closer to the shoreline, and they didn't really farm, which I find fascinating because I just thought back then everybody farmed. But it seems like they were really relying on the marine life, which is actually pretty cool. They definitely adapted to the area. And they lived in the area, and they weren't actually contacted by the Europeans until the earliest 16th century, when the Safety Harbor culture had taken over the Bay Area. And of course, that's the culture I was mentioning in the video again. And the indigenous people were actually organized into 3 to 4 chiefdoms around the shores of the bay. The Tocobaga were the main group that actually interacted with the Spanish, and pretty violently at times. By the way, if Tocobaga sounds familiar to some people, especially living in Florida, there is a Tocobaga beer by Cigar City. It's very good. But the Tocobaga were located towards the north end of Tampa Bay, which is what is Safety Harbor today, or Pinellas County, which is where I was at in Felipe Park. That's pretty much the exact area they were in, which is really, really cool. Tons of mounds and artifacts in that area, and they've preserved them very well. But the Tocobaga and the Calusa groups have lots of historical records about the tribes. They actually kept really good records. They interacted with people, so we actually know more about them. And there's less about the Pahoe, which lived near the mouth of the Hillsborough River, which is what would be kind of downtown Tampa today. And explorers briefly mentioned them, and some artifacts have been found, and they do show lifestyles similar to the Tocobaga, but unfortunately there's no actual distinct records about them, except for mentions here and there. Now, Panfilo de Narvaez and Hernando de Soto both landed near Tampa, and did not stay in the area long, and that's probably because there's no actual gold or silver in Florida. And of course we know that's what they were looking for coming to the New World. But also probably because the natives were not welcoming at all. They were not the kind that they had encountered in other parts where they could show them gold and they were just wowed by them. These people were very suspicious of them, rightfully so. And that's why there's not a huge, there wasn't a huge settlement in this part of Florida for a very, very long time. They didn't want a permanent settlement. They were not happy with them trying to convert them to Catholicism. And they wanted them out. They actually fought battles. But what's really sad is after they left, most of the natives still passed on because by just being in contact with the Europeans because of the diseases they brought with them. Of course, diseases the Europeans were used to and the natives were not. And that actually really depopulated the area so badly that by the 1600s, there actually weren't... 16 to 1800s is really when it started happening. And by the end of the 1600s, 1700s is really when the depopulation happened rapidly. And there wasn't a lot left on the West Coast. And so it kind of left the West Coast of Florida largely unpopulated and mostly ignored. Now, of course, the mid-1700s, which is still when the plague, we're going to call it the plague right now, was happening because of all the different, I just lost my train of thought, you guys. Diseases, that's the word I'm looking for, because of the many diseases that were brought by the Europeans. So by the mid-1700s, they were still dying off or moving on, and colonization and formation of the U.S. happened. And so by the late 1700s, the Seminoles were actually being driven into Florida. And the Seminoles really didn't spread to the middle part of Florida until the 1820s, which is about the time the U.S. formally gained control of Florida from the Spanish. And the Tampa Bay area had residents from Cuba and the Native Americans who were still there had kind of became fishermen and created camps called ranchos, and they were all around the shores of Tampa Bay. And so this is what people really saw when they came to this area at first. And there was actually a large camp at the mouth of Spanish Town Creek, which would be today like Hyde Park and Bayshore Boulevard, if you've been to Tampa or you've heard of it. Bayshore Boulevard is where this creek rancho town would have been. And that's what was really inhabiting the shores of Tampa Bay for the longest time until the U.S. really took over Florida. And when they took over Florida, forts and trading posts were starting to be built in their territories. They wanted to expand. They wanted to really make the most of what they had. And so Fort Brooke was officially established in 1824 at the mouth of the Hillsborough River, which is today downtown Tampa. Now, of course, that meant Tampa was initially really just an isolated outpost and even became almost abandoned, actually, due to the Second Seminole War, which was from 1835 to 1842. But people came back to the area after the war subsided, and it really helped that Florida officially became a state on March 3rd, 1845. And that meant that Tampa was officially known as the Village of Tampa, and it became officially incorporated in 1849. It was only home to about 974 people at the time, far cry from what it is today. And the village was officially named a town in 1855. Of course, times change. 1855 means that we're pretty close to the Civil War, and that's what brought the next change to Tampa. Tampa even enacted martial law in January of 1862, where Tampa city government did not operate during the war. They didn't so much as dissolve it as they just stopped. Fort Brooke was manned by Confederate soldiers at that time, and there was even a blockade set up at the mouth of Tampa Bay. But of course, what's a blockade without people running it? And they had small blockade running ships that actually got through with cattle from Cuba. And that actually helped to keep the fort going as long as it could. The USS Sagamore entered Tampa Bay and actually opened fire on Fort Brooke. And they returned fire, which caused the Sagamore to withdraw after a few hours, and the Battle of Tampa Bay did little damage to the town. So that was the first Battle of Tampa. The Battle of Fort Brooke, though, did happen a little bit later on October 16th, and the Battle of Ballast Point on October 18th, and this was both in 1863. And this actually saw Union forces inflict some serious damage to the town's economy when the troops actually landed. They didn't just fire from the bay, they landed. And the Union landed again in May of 1864. And this time, when they landed in 1864, they took the fort. They took Fort Brooke. And it was largely unopposed. And it was destroyed. Much of the fort's facilities were destroyed. They tore them down. And then they confiscated whatever remaining military supplies last at the fort to help them get through the part of the war. They were even so much as to take the cannons and throw them into the river, meaning that the fort and the area was pretty much defensively useless, which I guess was their goal. But, like, really, you couldn't have used the cannons? But they ransacked the fort and hung around for about 2 days and then left. Now, of course, the Civil War ended in April of 1865, and by May of 1865, the federal troops arrived in Tampa, and they occupied the fort and the town. And this is all part of the Reconstruction period that was happening in the U.S. at the time. And they actually remained in the town until 1869. Now, Tampa was poor during this period. They didn't have a great economy. They maybe had 1,000 residents. Again, really no economy. And then yellow fever actually ravaged the area several times in the 1860s and 1870s. And, of course, this caused more residents to leave the area looking for somewhere better. And in 1869, it brought about the residents actually abolishing the city of Tampa's government. They said, well, we're not really a city, we don't need you, so they didn't want them. And this actually, unfortunately, caused the population to drop even more. Fort Brooke was actually decommissioned in 1883. And the good thing about that actually might have saved Tampa was when that happened, it opened up development along the waterfront. The fort is gone, was destroyed, or repurposed, and only 2 cannons actually remain from Fort Brooke. You can still see them today, and they're on the University of Tampa campus. It's kind of sad that that's all that remains. I'm sure that was probably a really cool piece of history, especially through the Seminole Wars and the Civil War and the Reconstruction era. But I guess if they were still there today, we wouldn't have some of the cool parts of Tampa we have now. So I guess it's a win-win. But if you're ever near the University of Tampa campus, drive around and see the 2 remaining forts from Fort Brooke if you're ever interested. So that meant that the 1880s kind of brought about a change in Tampa, and a lot of different things actually kind of started happening at once, and that really helped the city. The first thing that happened was phosphate was discovered in Bone Valley. Now you're probably thinking, what is Bone Valley? And there is no valleys in Florida. Kind of. Bone Valley actually is southeast of Tampa, and it makes up present-day Hardy, Hillsborough, Manatee, and Polk counties, where they mine phosphate to this day, and it's actually the largest deposit of phosphate in the U.S. So if you've ever driven through and seen some of the Mosaic mines and things, they're probably digging for phosphate, and that really is a big thing in South Central Florida. And the mining actually meant that they could create a fertilizer and other products that could be used for the phosphate and then be sent out of the port of Tampa. And so from the mining and the creation of the fertilizer, this really became a boost in the economy, especially out of the port of Tampa. And this is actually still a large part of Tampa's economy to this day, is that phosphate and fertilizer. Now, the discovery of phosphate wasn't the only thing that helped change Tampa for the better. Plant had a railroad that came straight to Tampa, which brought residents, tourists, and trade to the new town. The new boom also meant that new areas of Tampa were founded, such as Ybor City and West Tampa. And they were both crucial to Tampa's growth and helped change it from an outpost to one of its largest cities in Florida by 1900. So that's a very short amount of time with a lot of growth. And I did mention Ybor City. And Ybor City is a popular and historic part of Tampa. It's actually probably one of my favorite parts of Tampa. It's just got great history and some really cool places to go, and the vibe is just something different. Now, Ybor City is just northeast of downtown Tampa, north of Port Tampa Bay. And the neighborhood is very distinct. It's got gates and arches that welcome you in that say Ybor City. Its architecture is something different from any parts of Tampa. There's definitely a great food, like if you're a foodie, this is definitely a place you want to go and check out new things. And just the legacy of Ybor City has really helped cement it to that part of Tampa. And Ybor City really does feel like its own city in the middle of a larger one. If you're in the middle of Ybor City, you don't feel like you're in the middle of Tampa. And it was founded in 1885 as an independent town. And it was founded by a group of cigar manufacturers, which were actually led by Vicente Martinez Ybor, hence Ybor City. The original population mainly consisted of Cuban and Spanish immigrants who worked in the cigar factories. Well, this is early 1900s brought about a lot of immigration to the U.S., and that meant that Italian and Eastern European Jewish immigrants also began to establish themselves in the area, especially the Jewish immigrants. The Jewish immigrants really helped build up Ybor. They established retail shops, grocery stores, print shops, farms, and a lot of other enterprises that really catered to the cigar industry and its workers. Now, of course, Martinez, I said Martinex a minute ago, I apologize, it's Martinez Ybor, started the practice of building small houses, or casitas, for the workers that they could buy at a cost, that he could actually have workers live near the factories, and he would retain them. He also helped bring them medical care, pave the streets and sidewalks, and he really helped make this a nice area for his workers. And that's actually really kind of cool, and that's really kind of what brought a lot of people into Ybor, is that they saw that not only were they going to have jobs, but that it was taken care of. And so this really helped the neighborhood grow rapidly during the 1890s. And it really changed the entire makeup of the town from an outpost to a city with paved streets and people looking for jobs and having modern amenities. The residents even founded mutual aid societies, which you could think of like unions, credit unions, trade unions. They had labor organizations. They published newspapers in many different languages, thanks to all the different immigrants. They had social and civic organizations and many other things that really helped the business and residents in the town. Now, all these creations helped to create a vibrant civil society that had people living in harmony, and it really brought out a new Latin culture that was unique to Tampa, especially the Ybor City part. And of course, Ybor City continued to grow at this time, and thanks to the booming cigar factories, which were producing 500 million hand-rolled cigars every year. That is a lot of hand-rolled cigars. Those people were probably amazing. It actually helped earn Tampa the nickname Cigar City by the 1920s. Now, the town continued to prosper with many different organizations, and that really became the heart of the city, which was its people and these organizations. Now, the longest-lasting organizations were the German-American Club, the Italian Club, and, of course, the Cuban Club. The Cuban Club is kind of famous, especially in Ybor. You can actually see it today. You can visit the Cuban Club. It is said to be famously haunted. I did not put any ghost stories in this, but if you go back and listen to one of my Haunted Florida podcasts from the beginning of the podcast, you can actually hear about the Cuban Club. There's a couple famous ghosts roaming the halls. But these clubs were really built to help the new immigrants find support and community among others in the area. So if a new immigrant moved, this was a place that they could go and they could find out how to do things or where to find jobs or help them feel more at home in a new place, which is a really cool idea, something you don't see a lot of anymore. And these were built by immigrants to help immigrants. And most of them were large, beautiful buildings that stood out, really kind of created their own. And you can still see most of these today in Ybor and West Tampa. And they created a community within a larger community just for themselves. And that, to me, is something that's really, really cool. The clubs offered everything from medical care to activities to aid in time of need. And the activities, the social activities, was really one of the most important because the buildings, like the Cuban Club, had a gym at one point, and a swimming pool. That is really cool. Of course, places where people could go, and cafes, and even at auditoriums for shows, and you could hold dances. And they would even take buses to go see other parts of Tampa. I was reading about one of the clubs that, I think it was the Cuban Club, they actually used to take buses from Ybor City to Clearwater Beach to get people out and to go see other parts of the area. And that's just really cool to me. Now, Ybor did hold a secret, though. It had a dark secret, as most good places really do, and that was Bolita. Bolita was an illegal lottery game run by organized criminals, and it was really popular in Ybor and Tampa in the first half of the 20th century. And so much so that they actually pretty much operated openly. This illegal game was pretty much an open thing. It wasn't a secret. It was an, worst kept secret in the area. And that was thanks to kickbacks and bribes to the local law enforcement. Nobody really stepped in to stop it, or they bid on it themselves. Now, Charlie Wall, who was from a prominent Tampa family and the son of a former mayor, actually organized Bolita into a very profitable business in the late 1920s. He even helped spread his talents into bootlegging, casino gambling, prostitution, and other illegal ventures that all ran out of Ybor City, not to mention he helped with Prohibition. Now, the 1930s were really the corrupt highlight of Tampa and Ybor City, with many people accusing stolen elections and mayors being on the payroll of many organized crime factions, usually rivals. And it was really known as the Era of Blood, where local criminals fought over the control of much of Tampa and Ybor. And Santo Trafficante Sr. actually came out as Tampa and Ybor's leading crime boss, with his son eventually taking over, and he helped extend the business well past Tampa. And the sense of lawlessness in Ybor really ran rampant. It kind of gave Ybor, I guess, not a good feeling to some people. But it ended in the 1950s. More federal law enforcement came in, started cracking down on the city. Bolito was pretty much run out, and I mean, I'm sure factions of it still existed or still do exist to this day, but they did help clean up and make Ybor feel like a little bit of a safer area. Now, of course, the 1950s, by then Ybor had seen a lot of ups and downs, especially during the World Wars. Many veterans came home after World War II, and Ybor wasn't offering as many options as it used to. They chose to relate to other areas. And the reason for this really is the cigar industry was hit hard. It was really hit hard in the Great Depression. Not many people were spending money on cigars. It's no longer the luxury it should have been. And it never really recovered. And this meant that people were coming in having no jobs. And with the new GI Bill, veterans could get an education, and that meant that they could leave Ybor and they could go do other things outside the city. And so this really started the true decline of Ybor, really up until the 1970s. And even after the 1970s, because the urban renewal program was a thing, and that was really meant to help cities change their faces, to give it a better look, to bring in new businesses, better homes. And really all it did was see the residents who had lived there for years displaced and their homes razed for this new construction, which is not okay, and that still happens in a lot of big cities today. Looking at you, Nashville. But, sorry. And they were hoping that the urban renewal program really would have succeeded, because they were thinking that it would be like it had been in the French Quarter of New Orleans. I mean, the French Quarter of New Orleans was rapidly changed and brought about tourism and really helped the city, but that didn't happen in Ybor. Ybor really just stayed stagnant for a lot of years. The social clubs were in decline, and then with the construction of I-4, it meant that people weren't coming to the areas of Tampa like they had been. So Ybor kept stagnant and declining. You might have a spike every now and then in through the 70s, but not really. But the late 1980s kind of brought out a new development in Ybor, with the influx of artists looking for new and expensive places to live. Well, there was plenty of these. The storefronts on 7th Avenue were converted to studios and galleries, and that really did start to change the face of the old city. The storefronts and vacant buildings became bars, restaurants, nightclubs, and other attractions for people who were moving into the area and looking for new options. And really, by the 1990s, that brought a new life into this old town. The crowd started to come back on the weekends, and it even got to be where it was like nighttime carnival with all the new people and tourists that were starting to crowd the areas. And it continued to grow and change and adapt, and it really stayed relevant even into the 2000s. Ybor today is still relevant. I love Ybor. If you want to see these changes, though, you can visit the Ybor Museum Park building, and you can see the changes and take tours of the gardens and the casitas that still exist 100 years later. Yes, there are still people living in those houses that were built 100 years ago. And the city really has an important part of Tampa, and that's why I wanted to include it in this podcast. I love Ybor. I love the electric trains that you can ride for free. They're actually free. You can take in the local beer. There's a Tampa Bay Brewing Company downtown. I know that there's actually a lot of other local breweries down there, Coppertails near Ybor. And it's really cool. You can take in the sights. You can definitely take in some great food down there. They have shows. I know there's a lot of places in Ybor that a lot of bands I like to listen to. They usually play in Ybor. And so it's really become kind of its own thing again. And I'm really grateful for that, because Ybor does have a really cool history within the part of Tampa. And the fact that it's still standing is great. I also personally like the fact that I can go to IKEA and then go over to Ybor for lunch and a beer. But that's just me. So Tampa has obviously changed. It's changed a lot from that outpost to a large area that has many different things, where everybody can find something that they like. Tampa Bay is even home to the Tampa Bay Bucks, the Lightning, the Rowdies is a soccer team, side note, and the Rays. And each team really has its own loyal fan base that offers a sense of pride to the city. The Tampa area is also home to several spring training sites, such as the Yankees, which is actually off Del Mabry, the Blue Jays play in Dunedin, and the Phillies play in Clearwater. And so you can actually go see all these spring training games and practices, all while exploring the beautiful city. And of course, the city does have more than just sports. It's actually got some really cool hidden attractions. The Florida Aquarium calls Tampa home, and it is an amazing aquarium. You can visit the aquarium in downtown Tampa. It's near Channelside, and you get to see some amazing events, exhibits, and learn about their efforts to really help leave the world better than we found it. They have a really cool coral conservation program. You can even adopt an animal to help with their care, and you can watch the animals explore the habitats. They have a really cool Wetlands of Florida exhibit that shows off the birds, the turtles, and otters up close. You can pet stingrays. You can see lemurs. They have a really cool turtle mascot you can get your picture taken with, which I did. I'm totally okay with that. And it's really a fun place to go. They even have a cool splash zone for the kids outside on hot days in Florida. Can't even say summer, it's really year round. It's just a really cool experience and exhibit, and they do hold some really cool events after hours. The other cool thing about the aquarium is that the free electric cars from Ybor or through part of Tampa actually go to the aquarium. So you can park at the aquarium, ride around, your car's still there and safe when you get back. I definitely recommend it. There's also the Clearwater Aquarium, and that's another fun place to go. It's not far from downtown Tampa. It's about an hour with traffic. And the aquarium is actually more home to rescued animals. They really take in more rescued animals. And it was home to Winter. Winter was a dolphin. There's actually a movie about her. She just passed away earlier this year. It's sad. She was the dolphin where they fixed her a artificial tail. And that was really, really cool. They do a lot of work with rescued animals. And there's plenty of exhibits that you can see. There's actually a really cool virtual reality exhibit that they're doing right now. Boat tours go out of the aquarium to see the estuaries or even Clearwater Bay, which I didn't know that until I was doing this. I've been to the aquarium once. I didn't think I explored it thoroughly, and now I'm sad. I'll have to go back again. And the aquarium, wow, let me try that again, is of course located just minutes from Clearwater Beach, voted one of America's top beaches many times. And so that lets you experience really cool animals up close and then enjoy your day at the beach. One of the really cool things that I think is like a hidden gem in Florida is that on Tampa's colder days, yes, there are colder days in Tampa, there's actually the Tico Manatee Viewing Center. And you can see the manatees gather in the warmer waters of the habitat when the weather gets cooler, usually fall, winter, a little bit in the spring. And the habitat provides a safe place for manatees. And of course, they're little baby manatees, which are so cute. And people can watch these gentle giants float about in the water and have a safe place in the warmer waters, really free from a lot of predators. And they really have set this up really cool. You've got large platforms that you can walk out on to see them. And it's just kind of a fun, random thing to do on colder days in Florida. And it lets you take in one of Florida's, really... I think manatees really are pretty much just for Florida. I know they're in other parts, but I think Florida's really adopted them as their animal. So it's really cool that you get to see that, as Florida's like mascot, unofficial mascot. The next thing really cool to do in Tampa is honestly one of my favorites. I have usually annual passes to this, and that is Zoo Tampa at Lowry Park. I love this place. They have so much to offer for everyone. They have different areas to ensure that people get to see their favorite animals from a safe distance. They have an amazing exhibit for primates. You walk in and they're doing their thing on the ropes and the little island. And I mean, you can hear from the moment you walk in, you can hear the primates. And actually you can hear them from pretty much every part of the zoo. But it's really cool. They have their own island exhibit with many different types and hang out and enjoy the day. You get to see babies. Sometimes you get to see them doing animal things that you weren't expecting them to see. Totally have seen that before on accident. Which caused kind of funny. Side note, we were there at Zoo Tampa and the monkeys were doing monkey things that they shouldn't have been doing, or they should do. But a parent didn't think that they should be doing it and got mad that their child saw them doing these things and did not understand why the zookeepers weren't breaking it up. Okay. I equate that lady to when I was working at Disney World and someone asked me why I couldn't turn the rain off. Nature happens. You don't like it? Don't look at it. Walk away, come back again in a minute, maybe they'll be done. Or the rain will stop, who knows. Sorry, side note. So, the really cool thing about the zoo that I love is they have a penguin exhibit. You can see them feeding the penguins. And it's just so cool. I love penguins. They also do a lot of work with the manatees. They even have the David A. Straz Jr. Critical Care Center for Manatees. The center opened in 1991, and they've helped over 400 manatees, with 230 of them being able to go back into the Florida waters. So that's really cool that not only do they help endangered species, but they also help the animals get back into their own habitat to live their fullest life. And the coolest thing about the zoo, they have their own water coaster and a roller coaster. So If you're into roller coasters and seeing animals and you don't want to go to Busch Gardens, I don't blame you if you don't. Zoo Tampa is a great, second choice. And no, it's not a huge roller coaster, but it's enough to say you've been on one, and it's kind of fun. They also have a really cool safari ride you can take through the African habitat. It's really kind of a fun thing. They have a wallaby petting area where you can pet the wallabies. And they also allow you to see animal conservation at work every day while making it fun. And of course, they have the giraffes. You can feed the giraffes and you can see the different animals. I love it. I can't say enough about the zoo and the work that they do, especially for the animals, and it being in Tampa. I'm not saying that I might have gone to the zoo and then gone to a Yankees spring training thing, but, I'm saying that that's also an option. And, of course, Tampa does have fun places to visit, such as Busch Gardens, which I talked about in the theme park episode. You can drive over the Sunshine Skyway Bridge towards Sarasota, or you can visit the Bro Bowl, which is actually one of the last remaining skate parks built during the Golden Era in the 1970s, and it was actually the first skate park in Florida. You can take a stroll through Tampa's Riverwalk or go through Curtis Hickson Park. Of course, you can visit St. Pete and Clearwater, which are 45 minutes to an hour over one of any 3 bridges that connect the Tampa area. And you'll find some really cool beaches in between St. Pete and Clearwater. My favorite is definitely Indian Rocks Beach. It's just south of Clearwater Beach and Sand Key. And it's just a really nice, quiet, there's parking. If you want to go, you have to get there early kind of parking, and it's free. And it takes you away from all the real touristy areas, and you just get to enjoy the really pretty clear waters. And yeah, Tampa just has so much to offer, not just in Tampa itself, but even its outside. Of course, I can't say enough about Clearwater either. I love Clearwater. There's so many cool things. You can see some of the original Hooters. You can visit. There's cool sunset and cruises and dolphin sightings. They go out of the area. So I recommend it. You can even see Hulk Hogan walking around or standing in his shop. Side note, he's not as nice in person as you are led to believe. Or maybe he just wasn't to me and my family. Sorry. But the city of Tampa and the area around it have gone through many changes, which are you can definitely see that today. And they continue to change with the times. They celebrate their past with Gasparilla and the fun parades. They enjoy winning sports with great teams, and they have beautiful beaches that welcome anybody to the area. Tampa is actually one of my favorite places in Florida because it has so many different neighborhoods and small towns within a few minutes that you feel like you're somewhere else, all while still being in the city around the bay. And just be careful while you're exploring Tampa. Tampa still has gators. We still have hurricanes. You still have drunk tourists. You still have all the normal criminals. And we still have Florida Man. And today's Florida Man story kind of baffles me. I mean, I don't know if I want to applaud this man or be like, really, dude? And the headline reads, Florida Man stabs tourist despite having no arms. He was literally committed. So there was a homeless street artist in Miami who uses his feet to paint and apparently also uses his feet to stab tourists. The homeless man stabbed the tourist twice while wielding scissors with his feet. The man was simply asking for directions and got stabbed. And, I mean, the tourist left with a really fun memories of Florida and one really insane story. Florida seems to be good for both of those things. So I guess just be careful of who you ask directions for or from. I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode and the new desire to visit Tampa or the Tampa Bay area. I hope I've given you some really cool things to do the next time you're here. Thank you guys for listening. If you have a second, please leave a 5-star review on Apple. It really helps me to get the podcast out there and more people to see it. Don't forget to interact. Look for the polls and questions on Facebook and Instagram. Don't forget to tag me in your photos. Use that Florida feeling as your hashtag so I can see what you guys are doing around other parts of the state. Again, thank you guys for listening. It's been a really cool 6 months so far. There's going to be many more. I hope you guys have a great week. Wear your sunscreen. Stay warm if you're cold somewhere. And as always, guys, that's your daily dose of sunshine.